Hello, I'm Rachel Barr, curator at the National Quilt Museum, and we're delighted to present this artist talk by our collection artist, Cassandra Beaver. Cassandra has 4 quilts in our collection, including this one, Infused Plaid. Cassandra is going to give us some insight into her design process and creative influences that resulted in the creation of her quilt, Infused Plaid.
There are usually 3 general types of quilting. There's traditional, there's modern, and there's art. And I kind of float in the middle, but maybe a little more towards that modern quilting aesthetic. So my work has evolved a lot over the years. This quilt stemmed from my background in theater. So my degrees are in fine art painting and theater design and technology. I was primarily a scenic designer, and I also did some costume design. And so a lot of my work draws all of those things together to create the aesthetic that I've developed. I started thinking about how we think about our design process and the order that we go in to create any type of art. So for this quilt, years later, when I came back to it, I was thinking, well, most of the time I design either a piece or an applique design, and then I decide how to quilt it after I've done that basic outline. Sometimes I've even made the entire quilt top, and I'm going, oh, geez, how do I quilt this? But for this quilt, I designed the quilting first. So I designed where are all my quilting stitches going to fall on this surface that I'm going to create. And so I drew all of my lines. I use AutoCAD to do my quilt designs and drew all those lines in. Where the same colors intersected, that determined where my piecing was going to be. So the entire linear quilting pattern was designed first, and then anytime that you see a pieced rectangle or square, that was determined by the quilting design itself. And this ultimately became a series of quilts that focus on this. So you're going to notice that the thread gives you a lighter form of the color. So the pieced sections are nice and dark, but the thread is created with a heavier weight thread. So when we use thread, I would say most of us are probably piecing with something like a 50 weight thread. It's a fairly light thread. The smaller the number of the thread, the thicker it gets. So this quilt was done with 28 weight thread in the quilt top and 50 weight in the same color on the back of the quilt. So if you were to look at the back, it would just be a lighter version of what you see on the front. This quilt came from a lot of my favorite colors, because my favorite color is pink. And I also wanted to incorporate some complementary colors because I like the way that they play against each other when they have a chance to intersect. So I was particularly interested in getting that pink and this chartreuse green to interact, as well as the turquoise blue and the orange. I always say I like my quilts to make people slightly uncomfortable when you look at them. I mean, we usually look at a quilt as like a comfort object, but it adds some more interest when you can offset the design. And most of the time when you offset a design, you're also tempted to put it towards the bottom because that puts a little more weight to the bottom. We kind of like that. When you look at a horizon, the ground has more weight to it than the sky. And so I tend to offset my designs to make you just a hair uncomfortable and offset it towards the top. So a lot of my quilts, you're going to see things offset upwards to engage your eye. Somebody a couple of days ago when I was in said, your lines are so perfect. Well, they're not. So that's the important thing. They're not perfect. Because we are so used to living in a world where everything is so manufactured and so perfect and so straight that if something is really, really super perfect, you're going to glance at it and keep going because your brain is filling in, oh, that's all the same. That's perfect. Anytime that there's just a little bit of a bump in a line, even if you don't realize what's happening, it's causing you to slow down just a little bit and engage with it more. So when you start to see those just minor imperfections, you're getting a chance to see the artist's hand, and it doesn't look as manufactured and draws us in a little bit more. I would always say that if you're just starting out, don't be intimidated by a technique, because a lot of people will tell you that something is hard, but everyone's idea of what is hard is different. I design a lot of foundation paper pieced patterns, and even my most complex quilt has been multiple people's first quilt because they didn't know it was hard. Find something that you really want to do, something that you're going to want to look at, and take on the project that's going to hold your interest. I am at The Not So Dramatic Life is my website. I blog weekly, and I send out a newsletter as well.